I'd like to call the special meeting of City Council for Tuesday, March 17th to order. This morning's meeting was called at short notice, and obviously the transition in the world that we're operating under right now is a fast-moving time, and I felt it appropriate that we get council together and have our staff and administration give us an update on some of the components that we've been dealing with over the last 3 or 4 days in respect to some of our facilities and decisions that we've been having to make around those, as well as some updates on some of the planning that we need to continue to do as it relates to the operations of the city, and provide some update to council on those components. And so item 2 of our agenda, 2.1, is city planning with regards to the COVID-19 pandemic. And we got 4 or 5 items this morning that we're going to cover under that, with Kevin as our acting CAO. Our CAO, Blair Leckstrom, is joining us remotely from his fast-moving vacation that's not going to try and get home soon. And Blair, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So with that, I'll turn it over to Kevin. 2.1, city planning with regards to this, and the first one is our essential services. Kevin?
Yeah, good morning, Your Worship, Council. What I'll do is I'll give you a little bit of a briefing on a couple areas. We also have fire and police in the building, if Council would like to hear directly from them on what their contingency plans are. I know there's been lots of questions, concerns revolving around water and water delivery. So I wanted to make sure that we let everybody know that obviously it's an essential service, and that there is plans in place to ensure that that service continues. My manager's been working the last number of days putting things in place, plans, working with staff, developing some shift work. We have the ability at the water treatment plant to operate remotely, which is key, so we're able to do that if necessary. The plant is also unique that it allows our workers to be spread out, typically in different facilities at different times, so again, maintaining those distances from each other. We've also reached out to one of our recently retired operators, so we've got them if need be. If we become short-staffed for any particular reason, we can call on him. He's still certified. We've also checked with all our supplies, all our disinfectants, all those things, so we're good for at least a month as far as that goes. We get our supplies from I think it's Saskatchewan, so again, shouldn't be a major issue at this point, but we're well set up. So again, just that reassurance piece, water delivery, it's not an issue, won't be an issue. Water sales for the rural customers, again, will continue to operate, will not be an issue. On the sewer side, we've got the truck waste facility and the reclaim facilities. They'll continue to operate as necessary, but if they were for some reason to become a bit of a strain on our resources, we have the ability to discontinue those. We just reach out to our contractors, let them know, and that wouldn't be an issue. So, but for now, essentially in that area of the world, it is business as usual for us, and we'll continue to do that.
Again, Kevin, I'll just speak to that very quickly, because I did reach out to Shell as for the reclaimed water facility, because they are the prime partner with us on that, and advised them that in the event that something happened with us as it related to the operations or resourcing, that we may have to shut that facility down, as well as I reached out to Encana, who have a partnership with Shell in there, and they were both very understanding and appreciated that we give them the heads up. And so it's just, in the event that we need to do it, we've got the pieces in place to be able to move forward with that and support the core function of that water treatment facility and delivering treated water, safe, reliable drinking water.
Yeah. Okay. Any more questions on water and sewer on that side? Public Works, again, we have the ability there to keep our social distance. Limit who works with who, how we do that. If we get in a position where we need to reduce the workforce or to send folks home, we can certainly look at doing that on a bit of a rotational basis, again, to spread people out. And ultimately, we always have the ability to respond to emergencies, water leaks, sewer plugs, those types of issues. So I'm not concerned that that we should be able to respond to anything that we need to in that regards.
Councillor Parslow?
Kevin, just 2 people to a truck would cease.
That's correct.
Right.
So we've talked about exactly that. Also talked yesterday about cleaning all the equipment on a regular daily basis, because we do have operators that one day may operate one piece of equipment, but they may be moving into another one the next day. So it's again working on that disinfection piece.
Nearing the end of the season for hopefully snow removal, and it hasn't been bad, is there any aspect to that, Kevin, in terms of the intensity of workforce, or will we play that as it occurs if necessary?
Yeah, exactly. Right now, obviously we're in good shape right this time of year. You know, the issues that I see for arising could be, you know, some snow where we have to get out and sand, or possibly a large dump where we have to do removal. That would put a little bit more strain on our resources. But if other than those events, we're pretty able to manage at a, you know, and just deal with the critical pieces.
So maybe a question there just for us in terms of that, in the event that we have a significant event under snowfall and we have a policy that we as driven by council for priority routes and how we do them, that if necessary we can give council, can give the direction to, if necessary, to carve that back to say our policy is going to be still hills, still going to be emergency routes, still going to be those, but maybe we're not going to do residential if the staffing impacts are affected by that. And so would we need to do something around that to in order to give some break from policy?
I would suggest at this time, if we see an event coming of that nature, then I think we would maybe know what our situation is from a staffing perspective, because this is changing so fast. To look out a week to 2 weeks is problematic, and we're making a lot of assumptions. So I think that we keep an eye on things, and if and when that comes and we look at our resources, then we can certainly reach out to council and make those decisions if necessary.
Sure. Thank you.
Fire department spoke with fire chief yesterday. Essentially what they're doing at this point, they're limiting their exposure of their members to the public. So there's no tours of the fire hall, inspections. They're reduced those to essentially nothing, just only critical. Doing most of the work from the office. Really trying to limit any exposure to the public. Again, trying to make sure that crew stays healthy. And the RCMP...
Councillor Parslow, sorry, I had a question.
Just the fire department, sleeping arrangements, aren't they rather tight?
I honestly, I can't answer that. And maybe
I was just wondering if there's a way of improving the separation for the staff who are on night duty, because my recollection, and I may be wrong, is that they're in quite close quarters.
And I would have to...
Should we bring the chief in and just ask that question?
Sure.
Your Worship.
Morning, Chief. If you can just maybe at the delegation table, because we need the microphone.
Okay.
So Councillor Parslow had a question?
Yes, we're just talking about staff separation, you know, separate, safe distance, and I was just wondering about sleeping.
Yeah, the dorm room is set up in such a way that everybody, well, first of all, the captains sleep by themselves. I won't go into why. But on the other side of it, there's nobody any closer than about 6 feet from each other.
Okay,
So
good.
just keep the social distance in general in for our sleeping quarters.
Okay.
So they're all individual, or they're separated by a minimum of 6 feet?
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. And I did update council on the precautions that you're taking as far as limiting.
Yeah, the only real concern we might have is on, say, doing medical responses, and to that end, we've brought in gowns for the guys to put on, safety glasses, gloves, and masks, just to keep them safe. And then, in general, we're not going out into the public unless it's an emergency. So our people are lot safer. We have one individual who has just come back from vacation, and he's on 2-week leave, or 2-week isolation, so other than that, it's, you know, business within the building as usual, but other than that, we're quietly just hoping we don't have to get too involved.
Good. I'll raise that aspect of emergency response for our MPAs in terms of with the province, and ensure that they're aware of it. It's a potential risk we want to be aware of, and we'll get a response back on that.
Yeah. As I say, we have stepped up our game a little bit on that. Normally, we just go on our turnout gear, but with the potential, we'll put on the gowns and stuff, so we just don't have to be as vigilant with, you know, our regular clothing and stuff. We can dispose of anything that comes in contact and be done with it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Would you like Damon to come in, or are you good?
I think unless we get a question, we'll
Okay.
carry on, Kevin.
So again, just speaking briefly with the RCMP yesterday after we had a senior staff meeting, RCMP not really able to limit too much of the public exposure, although they are limiting who are coming to the front counters and things like that. But he did mention they have the ability to, some of the municipal operators that work in the building, they have the ability to reduce staff if necessary. But they would not be able to work from home just because of the type of work they do. They can't do that remotely, but for them it's typically business as usual right now. Is there any other areas that you had questions on as far as essential services?
I can't think of anything. Public Works was one for me in terms of making sure we have the ability to respond to that and how we're managing that, but other than that, that was it for me.
Okay.
Okay.
City-owned and leased facilities. So as council and many saw yesterday, we closed some more facilities with the update from the province and the ban on gatherings of 50 or more folks. We felt it was prudent. We reached out to KPAC, and they were actually already in the process realizing the directive from the province. So that has now been closed, including the daycare. The library, they were closed at the end of day yesterday as well. Curling Club and Lakota. So Lakota people still have access obviously to the horses that are in the barns and lawn, but just no public events. So any of those facilities that have city workers, such as the pool, or I guess that's the only ones that probably do. The library is separate, but those employees currently are being utilized where we can. They're coming in, they're doing cleaning, maintenance projects wherever we have the ability to do so. We don't know how long this is going to go on. There's likely going to come a point where we won't have work for those individuals to continue, and our understanding at this point is those individuals will not lose pay because of this situation. So that's kind of the direction we're taking at this point. Now this could go on for, as we all could guess, who knows how long, and there may come a point in time down the road where we have to make some different decisions, but for now, that's the direction we're taking.
Councillor Parslow?
For the swimming pool, is there an option of doing the annual maintenance which, now, so we avoid a close down in September?
So we're doing some of that, but the usual shutdown is when we do all our capital projects in the pool, and I don't have that in front of me at this point in time, but wouldn't have even been able to tender or do any of that work. So that we'll have to, depending on how long this shutdown goes, we'll have to possibly reevaluate whether we have a subsequent one in the fall and whether those projects get shifted or how we manage that. But that's typically, we do our capital projects during the shutdown, and we haven't even had time to, you know, the budget was just essentially approved to move forward to tendering.
I think, to me, that's a good opportunity, potential for us to maybe, Kevin, if we can get Ross to put that on the radar and start to begin to have that look at the capital budget, what's required, what's on the line for 2020 for capital and that turnaround. And if this looks like that it's moving for a bit, that let's move it forward, and because it's gonna really not be great if we are down for a month, 2 months, 3 months because of this, and then get the okay to open it in July or August and then close it again in September. So if it looks like it, maybe that's an opportunity that Ross can do some initial work on it. Okay. If it is capital and we haven't got the budget approved, that can come back in a special meeting, and we can get council's direction on how they want to deal with it.
Absolutely.
Good. Thank you. Any questions on any of the facilities that we've closed down or decisions we made in terms of how and why those are impacted for council? Primarily driven by the direction from the province in terms of crowd and spatial requirements. And we still are, I think, Kevin, for the folks that have a need to access the building, whether it's a rink to get maybe their skates or whatever out, we're still having our staff there and still available for people to be able to do that and access that. It's this whole direction from the government and the Chief Medical Health Officer in terms of why some of these decisions have been made.
Yes, yes, absolutely. We do have the ability to get in the facilities if the public needs something.
Sure.
So that's still available to them.
Councillor Parslow?
Yeah, so I mean, with this problem, I mean, I appreciate the way we seem to be responding to it and supporting income to our workers and so on. But just moving forward from the swimming pool, and I really thought you did a nice summary. I mean, we'd look kind of bad if we suddenly closed it again in September when we could have. But other aspects of work that we can move the capital forward, so we are using our staff in a safe way, and also in a productive way. There may be other avenues. We should, when things settle down over this immediate piece of work you're doing, I think we should look at it overall, because we need to use this. Sometimes there's opportunities come along in these crises, and we should exercise those opportunities. Thank
you. Councillor Earl?
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, everyone. I just to echo Councillor Parslow's point, I think it's above and beyond. Once we've addressed the immediate concern around public safety and health, there is a conversation that has to be had around what powers we as a local government have in conjunction with our partners at the provincial and federal level to support local business, and what we can do, whether it's through capital spending, whether it's through some sort of other program to help businesses stay afloat, because we're already seeing instances of businesses acting responsibly and closing down portions of their sites to the public in order to maintain community health. And I just want to make sure that once the immediate danger is behind us, we're able to emerge from this in a reasonable position. And I know retail and hospitality is going to be one area where we're going to be, I think, significantly challenged over the next little bit. So just a note for conversation to come, maybe. Not something that has to be talked about further right now.
Thank you. Anything further, Kevin, on facilities?
I don't think so. Not if there's any more questions.
I don't know if this fits. Sorry to.
Yep.
I don't know if this fits in. I just want to talk about. It's a lease facility in a sense. The Mile Zero Park. I'm just again. It's been mentioned about hospitality and tourism and stuff. I'm just flagging for council. It may come up at a future that there's some of our societies are going to be facing a cash flow issue, and I think we need to be alert to that and be willing to respond to it. I know the Mile Zero Park Society, because of some really exciting developments there, is going to be facing a cash flow situation. There may be others that we can help as well.
Yeah, and I think the art gallery probably, because it's under renovations right now, is still closed, but it's probably going to be in that position where once renos are done, that it's going to be looking. So we should be prepared to have a conversation, discussion about that, and then as well we'll flag that to bring that whole issue back in terms of how do we make sure in the springtime that the Mouser Park Society and the park and all those things are able to meet that operational requirement, so we hope for them. So good point. But we should flag that art gallery, and I had it raised to me in terms of that we should be ready for that when and if it reopens, and how that impacts the spatial requirements and crowds and all of that. Thank you. Kevin, staffing?
So, again, just kind of following up on what we've heard from the federal government, provincial governments. Some of the things that we heard today, federal government's urging people to try and find ways to work from home, urging people to stay home generally. As administration, we've looked at that, and we believe it's probably prudent to try and start to look at some of that and allow people to work from home. I know Flavia can certainly speak to her department, but we're looking at ways of setting individuals up with some laptops, and that they can really run a skeleton crew in City Hall. And I think that would be prudent based on what we know, right? It just provides that social distance for all our workers and eliminates exposures to, or potential exposure to the public or otherwise.
So I think, to me, at this point, that what we need to do is, obviously that's the direction that's being provided by Chief Medical Health Officer, by the federal government, by the provincial government, and so I think what I'm looking for council is to be able to give administration now the authority to begin to move forward with making those operational decisions for our staffing and the various departments, to be able to make those operational decisions in terms of what staff we need to have on site as core and essential, and what staff we begin to move out into working remotely and minimizing that risk. Kevin? Yeah,
no, I agree. That would be good for admin to have that. And again, moving target. We don't know if things will change again into the future. We may get to a point where we want to close City Hall. I don't believe we're there yet. We still want to be able to provide those services, but you know, Flavia's got a business continuity plan that, you know, ensures that people that need to get water credits or need to pay utility bills or do all those sorts of things are available, and we can work around those sorts of issues. So, Councillor Parslow?
I was just wondering if that corporate officer has a motion to reflect what you just said, already scripted.
So I guess the motion would be that we, council direct administration to begin moving the operational requirements of getting staff to work remotely. Councillor Wilbur, second. Councillor Kemp, discussion? Kevin, any comments? Brenda? No? Councillor Parslow, did you have a question?
No, I was going to say Blair.
Blair?
No, I think that's the appropriate thing to do. I mean, you know, these are extraordinary circumstances we find ourselves in, and I think that, you know, a huge thank you to you guys that are there. I'm trying to get there, and hopefully within a day or two I'll be back. But a huge thank you out to our staff too. I mean, nobody has experienced this in their lifetime. I can't imagine, and the only way we're getting through this is by doing it together. So I think I can't express enough thanks to our city staff out there for doing what they're doing, but to our public as well. These are going to be challenging times, and there's going to be, I'm sure, frustrating moments, but be assured that with the team that we have, both our elected mayor and council and the staff we have in the city, we're going to do everything we can to help people get through this. I'm sure there'll be times when people aren't seeing things in the same light, but overall, I think as people who live in the north, we understand that we have to come together in times like this, and we're doing that.
Thanks, Blair. Any further discussion, comments? Councillor Earl?
With respect to the motion, or just oh, no, sorry. Got one.
Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Kevin, on the aspect of staffing as well, the whole aspect of that you had raised earlier about compensation, and so now we're moving staff out, and we're trying to keep our employees employed and active. We got some casual part-timers now, and I'm thinking specifically at the pool. We have lifeguards that are casual employees that work that 12, 15 hours potentially a week or a month, and now they're a bit impacted. My worry about that group of employees specifically is we struggle getting lifeguards, and I really am worried about losing them to other fields if they need that. Can you give us some input on that, Kevin?
So through your worship, the advice that we are getting as recent as this morning is that any of those employees that are guaranteed hours, and if we're asking them to go home, i.e. we're closing a facility or it's out of their control, it appears that we certainly have a responsibility to continue to pay for them. And so that again goes back to what our intent is. So I think where you draw the line on that is there's individuals that are not guaranteed hours. It's really a call-in basis, so those would not be subject to this because there is no guarantee of hours. But anybody that is guaranteed hours, whatever that might be, I believe we have a responsibility socially and otherwise at this point to continue to pay.
Now the gap for us in the Delta, and maybe Flavia can help us with this, is so we would normally have wages, we would normally have compensation, we budget that and build that in to our operational budget every year. The gap right now is the tax revenue or the fees and charges revenue that would normally come from users at the arena or at the pool. And so I'm wondering if there's the requirement, Flavia, to set up a contingency. There's nothing in our budget right now that's anticipated for the COVID-19 and the potential impacts to us on that. And so maybe if you guys could speak to that for us and give us some thoughts.
All right. So yes, currently we don't have a contingency, so we would be using from our reserved funds. The good news is that historically our funds are low. We don't have enough funds there right now. But the good news is that PRA, which we normally receive it by May, they are depositing the funds today. So that means that a portion of the operating funds is now available to be using in case of compensating the fees and charges that we not be collecting, and also the full option, the full expenditure that will be incurred by the full payments of the employees, and also although we have facility shutdown, we still have others expenditures that be running. So I did do an analysis of projection. What if we really close for 2 weeks, a month and a half, and 2 months? And based on that, we have enough funds to cover our expenditures and the loss of revenue. This does not include our municipal property taxes, because I'm assuming a 2-month period, the money from the property tax would be starting to come by June. So we don't necessarily need a contingency line. We can use from our current funds and the amount received this year from PRA.
Thank you. Would we, though, if we continue to pay, we're going to lose revenue right now from those fees and charges, and I guess, Flavia, would we need to should council be prepared or anticipating setting a contingency within our budget for the COVID-19 now, because this game is changing every day, and we either got to make the decisions in terms of how do we offset that revenue within the budget, or how do we cover that additional cost? So
in this case, because we don't know yet the impact, the real impact, what's going to happen, and the extension of the problem. So the budget, I'm actually asking the first 2 readings of the budget in the next council meeting without change, because some can be postponed, some revenue may be postponed, but as through the community chart, we have the option of amended the budget. So we can amend the budget anytime. So
Good.
that's the goal.
All right, thank you. Councillor Parslow? Councillor Earl?
On the other side of the ledger, I mean, you've done contingency up to 2 months. From being a bit of a news junkie, many are saying August, September. So if that's the case, some significant community events that we pour is the wrong word to use, support by figures will not be necessary because they wouldn't happen.
No. Yeah, this is a moving event now, and I guess my purpose of me raising this is really right now, I think this is a concern for our employees. One, who may get sent home, and do we ensure we continue that compensation for them, as well as these casual people. And I just wanted to make sure the council kind of consider that and give some direction. Councillor Earl?
Just a question to Kevin around, what level of coordination are we having with NLC? I know public colleges and universities are moving as much as they can of their classes online, and obviously we've got a student residence here that I'm just wondering, have we been in contact with them? Are we hearing anything?
I haven't as of yet, no.
Okay, just because logistically I could see that being the challenge, is having that many students kind of, if there is an instance where somebody has to self-quarantine in a college residence, that could escalate very, very quickly, and I'd just like to be ahead of that. I know there's a multitude of things probably coming at you, but I'd just like to know how we're coordinating with other large government organizations in town.
Councillor Parslow?
I mean, the issue around the lifeguards is somewhat unique, and it's certainly a factor that I wasn't thinking of, but I'm glad you raised that. But just for information, there are the societies that I'm aware of have already made decisions not to hire based upon the information they have, their casual staff. But the swimming pool is a unique thing, as you said, so we need to really talk about that maybe at a future council meeting. We've got some immediate response, which is a very proper one, but I'm just saying other organizations are not going to be engaging casual staff because they know they won't have the revenue stream to support it.
Yeah, I think honestly we'll make some more decisions as it goes further down the road in terms of our public works and our some of that stuff that is impacted. It's just more of this lifeguard piece, because if we lose those lifeguards and they end up finding other work, we won't be opening the pool again because we won't have lifeguards sufficient to cover the needs. And so I guess what I'm looking for is, Kevin, do you need some direction? Do you need some something from council to give you some direction in order to start to begin to move this forward? Are there any operational issues on the budget that you need us to provide you in this regard?
I don't think we do. I don't know if Flavia feels differently, but I think based on what we know, and like I said, with the legal information we have and those sorts of things, and just, it is uncharted territory and everybody's trying to kind of find their way through it, is I think for now what I'm hearing from council is they're supportive. I don't know if we need a resolution or not. You've given us direction to start to manage our staff and by operating from home. So, and I think from the closed facilities, like I said, we'll utilize them as long as we can, but there will come a point where we can't, and I think we're going to have to, we'll continue to try and manage that and see if we can find work for them elsewhere, but if we can't, they're going to be sent home, and at this point, we're going to continue to pay them.
Thank you. Flavia, anything you need in regards to us from direction on at this point?
Yeah, I think the only other thing I would like to address is about the penalty charges we are imposing now on utilities and sometime on accounts receivable. I am wondering if there is an opportunity of considering waiving that during this time, because if we think about also the residents down there right now, they are also struggling. Some are receiving salaries, others not. They are actually without receiving payment. So I think I would like, if possible, council waiving during this period season of the
So we currently have, we just implemented the penalty on our water utility account, as well as some other penalty charges, and so suggestion that we waive that penalty at this point until we understand that later in the year. Councillor Earl?
Is there a suggested timeline? We talking we'll start with 3 months and then reconsider? Or with the option to extend further?
Yeah, it starts immediately, and then we would revise within 2 months, because
Within 2
it's all
months?
depends on it's happening, and then...
So
Okay.
So
if I can I just want to ask Brenda a question in regards to that. Brenda, can we do it in an all-encompassing, or do we need it for each and every bylaw that may impact a penalty in it?
Yeah, through your worship, there are many bylaws, of course, with fees and charges associated with it. We could bring forward that at the next meeting on Monday.
Okay.
At the regular meeting. I don't think there's an urgent need for that, and then staff can do some research on that first.
Good. Thank you. So we'll do that, and I think we'll bring it back for our meeting on the 20th. I don't even know what day it is, but anyway, we'll bring it forward, and council can then understand the implications, what it means to us in terms of revenues, as well as where it is applicable, and council can give direction at that time. Does that work, Councillor Parslow?
Yes, it's something we need to consider. But again, with this whole thing, there's so many moving parts. I mean, I just looked at my cell phone there, and it seems that one of the actions going to be taken both in the United States and in Canada might well be that people will be getting direct cash payments from the federal government in lieu of lost wages. So if that's maybe not material to this, but it just illustrates the fact that we need to maintain flexibility and not make decisions that we can always add on rather than giving a long period of time. Maybe if we review it on a monthly basis. 3 months seems to be a bit of a reach. Who knows what the amount's going to be from the direct payment, but there are many people who definitely need some immediate support. But let's see the sufficiency of that support before we tie ourselves down.
And I agree, and I think that the issue to me will be, if we don't do something in the immediate, we have those penalties attached, and people who are now impacted are going to be, we have no alternative but to apply the penalties. So let's get that information in front of council, make some direction, and then decide the timelines in terms of how we're going to address it. Councillor Earl?
Thank you, Worship. And I'm hesitant to ask for more information from staff than is absolutely necessary, because I understand we're likely to all be under a time and increased workload. But I would note also that BC Hydro is announcing an assistance program for customers who are going to have issues, and any information we could get around that. I mean, I understand cash flow is potentially going to be an issue depending on how long this stretches on, but in the same vein as suspending the 10% penalty, if we can figure out some sort of program or way that we can assist people who are going to have a hard time paying their bills over the next, not just the penalty, but just in general, how we can defer it, or how we can work with people to make sure they're able to fund their other needs, that would be appreciated. Any information around that?
And I think for our first step is what we can do and what we can't do allow us under the community charter. And I've raised the issue, and I will be raising the issue further with the Minister of Municipal Affairs as an example around our tax penalty. On July 1st or July 3rd, the taxes become due, and if they don't pay, there's a 10% penalty from that paper. That's charter, that's community charter. The only way we can waive that is legislation changes through the Minister of Municipal Affairs. So we'll raise those issues and start to be able to make sure that we have a way to ensure that we work with our community, our residents and business community along the way. And we got some flexibility in some stuff and other stuff we don't. So I think it's a moving objective right now. Let's begin with what we can do and start that process and work away at it. So if we can direct administration, we don't need a direction, do you? Would you like a motion, Brenda? Thank you. So we'll have a motion that we direct administration to bring back for our next council meeting the information on our penalties within our budget. Councillor Wilbur, Councillor Kemp, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Anything further, Flavia?
Not at this moment.
Thank you. Kevin, anything for you?
I guess I would just finish off by saying thank you for support through this, and I think it sends an important message to the community and to the organization, so appreciate it.
Yeah. And obviously, we really appreciate Kevin with Blair away and Kevin, and this is fast moving, and so we really appreciate the work that you, as well as all our staff and all of the organization is putting into this, and the support of that. Blair, anything you'd like to add?
You know what, I was just echo the thank you that you just put out there, Your Worship. I think these are going to be quickly changing times that we're in. I think both administration and council will probably be in touch on a very regular basis over the next short time frame as we work through this, but we will do it, and we'll do it together.
Thank you. Anything other under item 2.1, Kevin, that you need?
I don't think so.
Reports 3.1, Brenda? You have a memo in regards to our by-election.
Yes, through your worship, I did receive a phone call yesterday from the ministry suggesting that we delay our by-election. So the process that is required for that is for council to rescind the appointment of the chief election officers and deputy chief election officers.
Thank you. So we can do that by way of a motion today?
That's correct.
Thank you. Move. Councillor Earl, second Councillor Wilbur. Discussion? We're going to have to rescind it, and we'll move it forward. The restriction, obviously the ban that restricts crowds of more than 50 puts us in a really difficult position to host a by-election, hold a by-election, when you got people in lineups and you got people in the polling stations. And so it really, that ban by the provincial government and the chief medical health officer really makes it very restrictive in terms of how you would accommodate that. Councillor Javeka.
So what triggers the 80-day period? Is it Councillor Bleckstrom's resignation, or is it the installation of your position as far as election responsibilities?
Yeah, through your worship, the appointment of the chief election officer is where the 80-day time period starts. So whenever we come to a time where this situation ends, or we know that we're able to hold the by-election, we would just count back 80 days and council can appoint the CEO. Then 80 days from that time, we'll hold the by-election.
Thank you. Councillor Wilbur?
Oh, I'm just wondering, for the sake of those that are watching, if we don't want to actually read out the recommendation.
Just, sure.
Read, for the...
Yeah, we should read it out.
I believe Councillor Earl was
Oh, sure. So we'll, following the recommendation is, in light of the recommendations being put in place by the federal and provincial governments regarding the coronavirus pandemic, and with respect to the upcoming City of Dawson Creek by-election, that council rescind the appointment of Brenda Ginter as Chief Election Officer and the appointments of Cindy Fisher and Sabrina Walter as Deputy Chief Election Officers.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Brenda. Councillor Parslow? Yep.
I nearly had a conniption yesterday when I read this because I read it as the CEO and immediately thought Blair, and gee, he has to rescind his appointment. I went through a little conniption, right? And then I realized he's not the CEO, he's the CAO. You're the CEO. Yeah. So maybe we need to not use that abbreviation when it turned to electoral office. He lasted 2 months.
The one other item that I thought we should talk about very quickly is our council procedure bylaw, and we have our procedures that says how much notice we need to have in order to call a meeting, and that's by the community charter. We need to give 24 hours notice. but participation in the meetings can be by electronic means. Brenda, can you give us a little bit of an overview of that?
Sure. The council procedure bylaw provides the authority to conduct a meeting by electronic means, either video, audio, or both. And there's no limit on the number of council that participates in that fashion.
So my thought was, I guess just preparation, if we need to call a special meeting of council and it becomes clunky for everybody to be able to get here, that I want to make sure that we have council's understanding that we may do it electronically. And the other thing I'm going to raise that's community charter is we need 24-hour notice. Sometimes the emergence of issues are happening very, very quickly, and if we need to get the council together very quickly, we need to give 24-hour notice under the charter to do that. So I'm going to raise that because sometimes that can be very difficult in today's circumstances. So just for council's information, but if we need to and we do it electronically, you guys have the ability to do that, and we'll facilitate that either via Skype or as Blair's done today, calling. Blair, Brenda?
Through your worship. If a state of emergency is required, the mayor has the authority to declare that, and that authority lasts for 1 week, and that time period will allow us to call that 24-hour notice.
Sure. I did a little bit of research on the state of emergency, and it really seems to be the Emergency Act is focused around emergencies that are related to fire, floods, or natural events that cause those emergencies. That I didn't see anything in there about these kind of circumstances, but it's a good point. And I know the city of Calgary has declared a state of emergency, and now the province of Ontario has. So we're in a really fast-moving environment right today. Councillor Parslow?
Wouldn't public safety be covered or?
Didn't seem to see that in the definitions of what constitutes a state of emergency, but we'll follow it through and be prepared. It was more I'm worried about just if we need to have an emergent meeting of council that we can do it electronically, and everybody's busy and everybody's traveling and things, so I just want to make sure we can get a quorum, and if you guys have to, we can phone in to do it. Thank you. Media question, anyone? Anything further from council? You have any questions, comments? Councillor Javekov?
So do we have any, anything other than rumors about the situation in Dawson Creek or even in the northeast?
So northern British Columbia has 2 confirmed cases that were confirmed of travelers that flew into Vancouver, were tested, confirmed positive. But they're from northern BC. And the news release yesterday by the Chief Medical Health Officer and the Minister of Health confirmed that those were the only 2 cases in northern BC to date. There was no further cases yesterday. There was 30 new cases in the province, in Coastal, and Fraser Health, Interior Health, and Island, but not in northern BC. So there's only still the 2 confirmed cases with mild symptoms. They were put under tight protocols of how they were to return home into isolation. And I actually did a look yesterday, and in northern Alberta, there is 1 confirmed case in the north zone of Alberta. So it's still very, very minimal in terms of the numbers of confirmed cases in northern British Columbia and northern health jurisdiction, as well as northern Alberta. And I'm just following along with the BC Centre for Disease Control and the news releases by the Chief Medical Health Officer, and just trying to confirm that information as it relates to things that I see are confirmed. Because so far, of the 2 confirmed cases, 8 of them live in Dawson Creek, 6 of them are in Fort St. John, 2 of them are in Fort Nelson, 18 of them are in Prince George. Like, the rumors are overtaking people. I get, and legitimately people are concerned and worried and scared, and so they're making these rumors are flying fast. And so I'm just trying to honestly stay just consistent on the messages that the Minister of Health and the Chief Medical Health Officer and the BC Centre for Disease Control give and put out.
Exactly. That's what everyone should be doing.
Yeah.
Can I just raise another point? I thought the very colourful notices that went out that this open meeting was going to be streamed were excellent, and I'm suggesting that we do that for the interim for all our meetings, so that people have that right to be informed, but to deliver it like we doing this one. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, we'll test it. We'll see how it unfolds. We'll watch the feedback from the community and the public, and I think it's another really good opportunity to engage people to engage and see what council are up to. And we're restricted in this room to how many people we could have participate, and we got to find a way for our community to participate. Councillor Earl?
Just to follow up on your point, Your Worship, according to Facebook, we've got 215 viewers at the moment. So thank you to everybody for tuning in, and please exercise an abundance of caution and common sense over the next little bit as we work through this.
Our message, and I think we all can kind of stay consistent on this, doesn't matter how many confirmed cases there are, our personal habits, our personal daily routines and regimen of washing our hands on a regular basis, coughing into your sleeve or sneezing, keeping that spatial distance, those are all things that we can all do to help maintain and flatten the curve and reduce the potential burden on our healthcare system. And I say this, and I've said it on my personal and my mayor's page, I believe we should be on the conservative side of how we move forward to ensure we do everything we can to help minimize the risk of this virus impacting our community, because I don't think any one of us want this on our watch. So, and I really appreciate the community and everybody involved who's doing that and taking that care and looking after our seniors and delivering support to those most vulnerable populations, because that's the people we should be most concerned about today. Any further comments, questions? Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Brenda. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Wilbur, second. Councillor Earl, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Great job.